Hello everyone and welcome to Newmarket for the start of the 2012 QIPCO British Champion Series. Last year's inaugural edition began and ended in trailblazing style courtesy of the fabulous Frankel. This year's series begins on the first weekend in May with the classic generation. The 3-year-old fillies will contest the QIPCO 1000 Guineas, but first up the colts do battle in the QIPCO 2000 Guineas right here on the Rowley Mile. Well, I've been joined by my fellow armchair jockeys, Lydia Hislop and Steve Mellish, as we look ahead to the 2000 Guineas. First of all, Lydia, what a surprise that we've got an unbeaten Aidan O'Brien colt that's favourite.
So often is the case, an exciting winner at Doncaster at the end of last season. It's going to be a big ask though. It's going to be typically a very competitive race that sorts out who is the leading 3-year-old colt. At this time of year, they've got to come to bloom early. And Steve will be seeing some horses that we haven't seen for a while and others who've already strutted their stuff this year.
Yeah, I think it's an unusual, whether it's unusual, I don't know, but it's a lot about potential rather than solid form. A lot of things that horses may do and what you think they may be capable of, rather than some horses put up a performance which is already, good enough to win a Guineas. I don't think there's anything that qualifies under those terms.
Okay, well, as we said, the favourite is Camelot, trained by Aidan O'Brien. Let's hear from the great man now.
Camelot has been favourite for the race ever since winning the Racing Post Trophy, very impressive last year. First of all, some people have said that was a substandard renewal. What was your take on the race?
Yeah, sure, obviously it's very hard to say any race is substandard really at that time of the year, because they're all only 2-year-olds and they're all only maybe out a couple of times, so it's very hard to say that really, and you don't ever really know until you turn up again.
And both the maiden and the Racing Post had 5 runners. Is it any concern at all about a bigger field, or he's fine for that?
Yeah, sure, I don't know. Obviously, he has never ran in a big field, but he's a straightforward horse. He's a relaxed horse, really, at home. So obviously, the bigger the field, obviously, the more dangers, So, but I don't think it's going to be a problem.
You weren't originally committed to running in the race. What factors were you weighing up in your head about before deciding to let Camelot go for the Guineas?
Yes, I suppose obviously it was the horse himself really. Obviously if he wasn't going to be ready that early, we didn't want to be forcing him. So we were letting him tell us really, and we still are. So he's coming along nicely, and everything is going smooth so far.
So do you see him developing into a middle distance colt in time?
Yeah, I'd imagine so, Steve. Obviously he's ran his 2 runs over a mile last year. He's just we're using it as a start-off race.
It's funny that Aidan O'Brien started him off racing over a mile, and then he went to the Racing Post Trophy, both races over a mile, whereas his 2000 Guineas winner, the likes of King of Kings, Rocket Gibraltar, they had races over 5, 6 and 7 furlongs as 2-year-olds, and I find it a little bit of a concern that maybe Camelot's best trip might be over further, and he might not be his best over a mile. Well, what about some of the other O'Brien runners? He's got other horses who've achieved quite a lot, the likes of Power.
Obviously, I think he started maybe at 6, and then 7 furlongs, and obviously he hasn't run a mile, I don't think. So obviously he's a little bit different than Camelot. So, but he's well, and he's a big, hardy horse, and we think and hope he's going to be ready to run.
Do you think a mile will be a problem for him?
I don't think so. But the horse shows plenty early speed in his work. So, I'm not sure how much further than a mile he will get. But listen, who knows? In his races, he's a lazy way of racing and comes home well. So it'll be interesting.
I like Power. He was second in the Dewhurst. I thought he hit a flat spot and then stuck on in a race that was steadily run. I think he'll be more benefited by a strongly run race, which hopefully the Guineas will be, and by the extra furlong of this trip. I can see him as the sort of solid player. I struggle to see him as the winner, but I think he's going to be quite hard to kick out of the first 4.
Okay. Well, traditionally, the Dewhurst was always the best pointer for the 2000 Guineas. Now, Parish Hall won the race last year, but yet he's not in the top echelons of the horses that people are considering for the race. Why is that?
Perfectly honestly, I don't know. Because perhaps it's because they all finished in a bit of a lump in the Dewhurst, and so that can often suggest that the horses were much of a muchness. But it can also suggest that the race was steadily run, which the Dewhurst was. Yeah. And I think if there's any horse that was going to have been disadvantaged by that, it was the winner Parish Hall, who is bred to excel over further than the 7 furlongs of the Dewhurst, at a mile and even up to 10 furlongs, and perhaps even beyond, but definitely up to 10 furlongs, and yet he still managed to win. Now, maybe he was advantaged by racing on the stand side rail, but maybe he was just the best horse in the race, and maybe, had it been strongly run, he would have proved himself by a greater margin to be the best horse in the race. That's the line I'm taking.
Well, another interesting Irish contender is Born to Sea, trained by John Ox. He's of course related to the 2009 2000 Guineas winner, See the Stars. We can actually hear from his trainer before we talk about Born to Sea.
What did you make of his 2-year-old career?
Well, he didn't run as early as we expected. You know, he was quite an early horse, very precocious. You know, you could have run him any time you liked. You could have run in April if we'd wanted, but we were obviously going to take our time a bit with him, and we had planned to run him in July, and he just got sore shins the week of the race, and so that put us back. That's why he didn't run till September, and we're a little bit caught for time then. The year was moving on, so we ran him first time out in a listed race, and he won nicely, ran to, you know, good rating, nearly 100 or so on his first start, which was good rating for a horse first time out, and then improved nicely after that. We were delighted with the first race over 6, plenty of speed, but we decided to try him at 7, and we had a nice, you know, 5-week run up to the Kilbullen Stakes. Everything went well. He seemed to improve and was going well, but the race didn't work out. So we were initially disappointed when he was beaten. He jumped awkwardly out of the stalls. Had a muscle tear, actually tore a muscle up at the top of his quarters. But then 15 minutes after the race, he was, you know, sort of stuck to the ground and couldn't really walk. So we had an obvious explanation. So, you know, 2-year-old year was a little bit disappointing in that we didn't get to run him often enough or find out a little bit more about him. But he's shown us enough to say that he's, you know, a potentially good horse, but he still has to prove it.
In terms of where he is now and where See the Stars was at this stage, where he's not what he developed into, would you say there are ability-wise similarities?
You know, it's the same with all of them. You just don't know until you get to the races and match them in against the best that they can take on. But yeah, there are some similarities. Sure, he's got plenty of ability, we know that. He's good looking, he's a great mover. He's got plenty of his brother's energy about him, and you know, he certainly has ability. We just don't know, and we won't know until he gets to the races, whether he just has that, you know, final kick that the good horses have and need, you know.
Steve, what was your impression of Born to Sea?
I think one of the strongest arguments in his favour is that the trainer is very careful with the horses he brings to England. He has got an extremely good strike rate, and he's an experienced and able trainer who knows what he's got. So I think the fact that he's running him in this race tells you he won't be too far away from the standard.
Okay, a horse with even less experience is Top Offer, who's only run once, a late summer maiden. It's amazing to think that he may have been favourite for the Guineas if Camelot wasn't running.
Absolutely, because he's so inexperienced. Roger Charlton took the view that he wouldn't run him in the Greenham at Newbury this season because the ground had turned soft and testing. It would be just his second start and quite close to the Guineas, and he took the view that he didn't want the horse to have a tough race then in the preparation for the big race. But that does mean that we've got a very inexperienced horse running in what can often be quite a tough race at the start of the season. So that would be the concern about Top Offer. Clearly the trainer believes he's good enough. He's got to prove that going markedly up in grade.
Okay, we move on now to horses who've shown what they're capable of this season, starting with Trumpet Major, who is very impressive in the Craven Stakes.
Yeah, he was really impressive. The way that he won suggested that he's improved markedly over the winter. Racing people would say has done well. He was only 5th in the Dewhurst, and a lack of tactical speed cost him there because he got shuffled back. He had to make his challenge on the outside, and I think he's a bit better than the bare form when beaten by Parish Hall. Again, he showed a lack of tactical speed early in the race, and Ryan Moore, his rider, has raised the possibility that he could get himself outpaced earlier, particularly if the ground were to be a little bit faster, particularly if the field was to be bigger. But certainly he has forced his way into the fore of our consideration by dint of the fact of having formed this season and very good form as well.
Well, it's time for us to make our selections for the 2000 Guineas. I'm going for Trumpet Major each way.
I'm going to go for Parish Hall. I think he's overpriced on what he's achieved, and I think he'll improve on his Dewhurst form with an extra furlong and a more strongly run race.
I'm going for Born to See. I think it's a race with lots of horses with potential, and I think he's got more than most. I'm not sure he's trained on. That's something you hear this time of year, particularly when the 1,000 and 2,000 guineas are being discussed. The betting on these classics is largely based on what horses achieved as 2-year-olds. Some will even line up without having raced as 3-year-olds. If we think of a 2-year-old horse as a human teenager, the Guineas takes place just as they're becoming young adults. The phrase training on asks whether a particular horse has made normal progress relative to his peers over the winter. Unlike other sports, racing tries to account for the relative ages of its competitors. When facing their elders, younger horses receive weight to compensate for their lack of maturity. For example, Camelot became favourite for the 2,000 guineas when he won the Racing Post Trophy, one of the most important races for 2-year-olds, staged over a mile at Doncaster in October. On that day, had the 2-year-old Camelot raced against a 4-year-old, he would have received an allowance of £24. On Guineas Day, a 3-year-old, as Camelot is now, would receive £13 from a 4-year-old. That £11 difference represents the normal or average progress a horse is expected to have made in the intervening 6 months. But of course this is just an average. Horses, like humans, mature at a different rate. At my son's sports day when he was about 12, this strapping lad seemed to win all the races by miles. 3 years later, I went to another sports day. The same boy was winning races, but he was nothing like so dominant and seemed nothing like so strapping. His peers had caught him up. So how do we apply this knowledge to the Guineas? Admittedly, there's some guesswork in assessing, or trying to assess, whether a horse will make more than normal progress from 2 to 3 years old. But there are clues. If a horse raced often as a 2-year-old, it suggests he was precocious. A lesser raced horse may have needed that time to develop, and may now have greater scope for improvement. If a horse was relatively small, or looked physically advanced as a 2-year-old, he may not make the same progress as those whose frames suggest more scope for improvement. Looking at a horse's pedigree can help. If his family did not improve much as 3-year-olds, he may follow suit. Or perhaps his family tend to be late developers. So training on is a comparative term. Most horses do improve from 2 to 3, it's just some improve more than others. Here are the leading 2-year-olds from 2001, with their rating followed in brackets by the rating they achieved at the end of their 3-year-old career. It shows that there's every likelihood of the leading 2-year-old training on and proving himself or herself just as good or even better at 3. Of the 11 horses that topped the ratings at 2, only 3 didn't go on to prove themselves at least as good the following season. Of those, Teofilo never raced again, so didn't get the chance, and St Nicholas Abbey only ran the once at 3. This augurs well for Camelot and De Bursim, though admittedly their rating is the lowest in this period.
Well, now it's time to concentrate on the QIPCO 1,000 guineas for 3-year-old fillies. The race was won last year by Blue Bunting. She was trained by Mahmood Zarooni, who once again has got a strong hand in the race, and we can hear from him now.
She won a Group 1 last year. She proved she's a nice filly. She worked last week also in a Rowley Mile. She worked, I mean, very nice. Even the ground was a bit soft, which is she don't really, like that ground. But I'm very happy with her. She is a very nice mover and she's a professional. I think the filly has ability. She have good kick, good turn and foot.
When she won the Fillies Mile at the track, briefly she looked, I don't know if it's fair to say, briefly sort of slightly unsettled by the dip. I know Frankie sort of made some comments afterwards. What did you make of that?
I mean, honestly, Frankie said the same. She said she can go, but she don't want to go. But we don't know if she was. I cannot say she's green because this is her third race. Is it because of the dip? Is it she was feeling something? I mean, we cannot really 100% know what the problem was. I mean, even in the last piece of work she did. I mean, when Frankie asked her to pass the lead horse, she don't want to do it, you know. So you have to force it, and she don't. I think she wants something in front of her and just chase it, you know.
although she has an excellent record as a 2-year-old, she has to be better if she's going to be the top 3-year-old filly.
Yeah, she's won narrowly in her. That might just be the way she is. I'm not sure that. I mean, when she won the Mayhill, she idled a bit. She went clear, then just waited in front a little bit. And they were at pains, I think, to hold on to her a bit longer in the Fillies Mile. So I think they were still learning about her last year. At least she wins. She keeps winning, doesn't she?
Well, Discourse is an unbeaten filly in the blue of Godolphin. She's only run a couple of times, and we haven't seen her for some time, Steve. Is it something that we need to be worried about?
I don't think it's ever a good thing. She's lightly raced. Again, she's a really scopy filly. She's the bigger of the two, lengthy and done really well from 2 to 3. I think she's a good moving filly, Discourse, and again, I'm not sure she would want too much rain, but I thought her win in the Sweet Solera was as impressive a performance that a 2-year-old filly put up last year. If she does come back to that sort of form, I think she's, deserves a lot of respect.
The impression is, Lydia, that she's got an enormous amount of ability.
Yes, definitely. She took a huge step forward from first to second start when winning the Sweet Solera. It is a concern to some degree that we haven't seen since August, because she lacks experience, so she's a step behind other more hardened fillies. But she did show brilliance that day, and I think she'll be suited by the extra furlong.
I mean, because she had a little bit knee problem, not a real, injury, but she feel that, and because she's a really nice, good filly looking, so we decide just to sit back with her and leave her for next year. I think she's a 1.5 mile filly, for me she's an ox more than the Guineas.
Oh, really? You think she'll stay well?
Yes, I think, but the plan, we're going to run her, and she showed turn and foot, and she won well her Group 3, if you remember. So I think there is many options for her.
And again, would she have any ground preferences? I was struck in the Sweet Solera again how well she moved. She floated over the ground on the July course.
Yes, I think so. You're right. Yeah, I think, but we never try her on a soft side. We don't know, but I think she will go even on the soft ground. Yeah. She didn't give me a good chance to talk.
Well, an unbeaten filly in the race is Maybe. She's trained by Aidan O'Brien, and we can hear from him now.
We were very happy with her last year, and we've been watching this race for a long time now, and very happy, everything going well so far.
We didn't see her till after the end of August, I think. Was that the plan, or?
Yeah, no, we finished this, and obviously I think she had 5 races in close enough space, so we didn't want to over push her, and we wanted to give her an early break for her winter, and so that we could start early, and listen, so far everything has went well.
And I've noticed in her form she's won on soft ground, she's won on quicker ground. Would she have a preference for anything?
I'm not sure. I think she won a maiden on very fast ground, I think, and then I think she won an Ascot. I think it rained and it got a bit slow, and she ran it to Cora. I don't think she's a big preference. She's a Galileo, and Galileos seem to go on everything, and fast ground, easy ground, so yeah, she's always was a very exciting filly, Steve.
And the track comes out with a dip, that's not a problem?
No, obviously you're never sure about the dip in Newmarket. It's an unusual place, and until you go race there you're never sure. But she's a high cruiser, travels, and it hopefully would be a help to her.
Well, Maybe was outstanding last year, and for me, she just about sets the standard for all the others to match.
She definitely sets the standard, and she was progressing all the time, right up to the highest level. She's tremendously likeable. I imagine she's going to make further progress as a 3-year-old. She is impossible to knock, I think.
I couldn't agree more. She's won on all sorts of ground. Her wins are up to 7 furlongs, but she's virtually guaranteed to be suited by the mile. She's already been over to Britain and proved she can travel. She was just really reliable, really progressive, and I say unbeaten filly after 5. Plenty of experience as well, which is a good thing. I couldn't agree more. I think she's got so many things in her favour.
You've seen her. What did you make of her when you saw her at Aidan O'Brien's?
Again, she was one of the more impressive horses I saw at the yard. Really, she's a robust filly. She's strong, and she was on really good terms with herself. I'd say out of all the horses I saw at that visit, she's the one that sort of made an impression on me.
Just tell me, when you say a horse is on really good terms with itself, when you see it at home, what does that mean?
I just meant really relaxed. Really didn't have to do anything. Happy to gallop by itself on occasions. A couple of them they go up in twos because they want company. She would, she was very tractable. just seemed very relaxed from the beginning in the barn to the end and the gallop. I didn't see her do anything wrong.
A proper professional then, and that's really what you see in her form lines as well as a 2-year-old. I'm sure she'll carry that on at 3.
Well, you can't dismiss some of the bigger priced horses or some of the less fancied horses in the 1,000 guineas. Let's talk about, for example, John Gosden's horse, the Fugue, a filly who's run just the once, but she could well appear in the 1,000 guineas.
I'm quite keen on the Fugue. She and her stable companion Starscope each won divisions of the same maiden. The Fugue's time was much faster. She bombed down the dip. She really handled the track really nicely. She's bred to excel over distances further than the mile of the Guineas, but she seems to be pushing herself into the picture. She's only had the one run, so that there is an inexperience stone that you can throw at her, but I liked everything that I saw and hear on her debut, and I think she is possibly a little bit overlooked.
John Gosden's left Starscope in the 1,000 guineas at this stage. She ran an encouraging race in the Nell Gwyn.
I think that's exactly right. I think encouraging his way to sum it up. She probably wasn't best positioned in a steadily run race. She was held up towards the rear, and she did by far the best of the horses who were ridden that way. She certainly gave the impression she would be a lot closer to the principals or to the horses who beat her if she met them again. How good that race was, in terms, I know it's a traditional Guineas trial, I didn't think it was a vintage renewal, and I think she does need to improve a fair bit.
She wore a hood for the first time. It was just her second start in that run in the Nell Gwyn. She gave the impression of being perhaps not entirely straightforward. I don't want to be too negative about her, because she has still shown improvement from her first to second start and has run really well for all the reasons that Steve suggests. But of the two John Gosden fillies, I prefer the Fugue.
Okay. A filly who was a Group 1 winner at 2 and has always been targeted at the 1,000 guineas is Lightning Pearl, trained in Ireland.
I like Lightning Pearl a lot. She ran in the Cheveley Park Group 1 at the end of her 2-year-old season. She had tried 7 furlongs early on in the year. I think she'll find improvement stepped up to a mile. I think there is encouragement for that on both sides of her pedigree, and I wonder whether those extra 2 furlongs will actually allow her to put more authority between herself and the horses that she beat in the Cheveley Park and the entirety of her peers. I like her a lot.
Well, it's time to make our selections for the QIPCO 1,000 guineas. I'm going for Maybe to maintain her unbeaten record.
I'm going for a filly that I think has been a little bit overlooked, and that's Lightning Pearl.
I like the chance of Maybe. I think she's got the best form in the race, and I think she'll improve at a mile.
Newmarket, birthplace of British racing and home to its largest training centre, fittingly has 2 racecourses. This one, dubbed the Rowley Mile, although it actually extends for more than 2, is used in the spring and the autumn. The other one, the July course, is used in the summer. It's way over there and will be a destination for us later on in this series. The Rowley Mile is an undulating track for the final 7 furlongs of this 10 furlong straight, but this marked descent in the penultimate furlong, leading directly into an ascent throughout the final furlong, exerts such an influence on races that are run here that it's earned a name of its own, the Dip. Races are won and lost in the Dip. Typically, a horse may enter the dip with every chance, only to lose its position or falter in its headway. You see horses edging to their left or right to a greater or lesser degree, having become unbalanced by the ground falling away irregularly beneath them, particularly on fast ground. It's hard to assess whether a horse will handle the dip until it takes its first steps into it. A horse's physique may offer clues. For example, those with bulkier upper bodies can be more prone to becoming unbalanced. Past form also provides some clues. Has the horse raced here before, or at tracks such as Epsom or Goodwood with cambers and downhill sections? But these are living creatures, so even that can't be static data. A horse develops with experience and maturity. What it couldn't do as a 2-year-old, it might grow to manage at 3. For example, Trumpet Major ran straighter in the dip when winning the Craven than 6 months earlier when 5th in the Dewhurst. Did rain soften ground help? Many of this year's 1,000 guineas contenders also have Rowley Mile form. Lightning Pearl edged left in the dip, but she may just have lost concentration after a long time alone in front. Lyric of Light took the descent gingerly, disliking its combination with fast ground. At a less competitive level than she will face on Sunday, the Fugue handled the dip boldly. It's a fascinating track, Newmarket. It's got a reputation for being stiff, so you might be surprised to know that by standard times, that is, the time it takes an average horse to cover this mile, it's actually the 5th fastest in the country. Admittedly, a larger number of higher class races are staged here than at most other racecourses, so that an interrogated statistic is skewed by the volume of better horses that run here. But it remains true that the winners of both Guineas would face a stiffer test of stamina if lining up over a mile at Royal Ascot later this season. Yet the fact that the final furlong of the Rowley Mile is uphill means that front-running tactics are harder to execute than on flatter tracks. That, and the undulations, take horses out of their rhythm, demand more of them. In races of the highest order, like the Guineas, this last ascent will find out those horses only clinging on to what remains of their stamina.
So we're all set for the start of the 2012 QIPCO British Champion Series with a weekend of classic racing at Newmarket. We hope you enjoy it, but for now, from all of us here, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.